I'm glad you're on here. That's all that matters.
drove home and changed. Thank goodness.
So your commute between your new and old place roughly about the same, isn't it?
Roughly about the same, but totally feels different. I spent like 7 minutes on the highway. But knowing it's not that far.
Right, I gotta go take my initial.
Yeah, you're prepped.
Yeah, gotta mentally prepare.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
The more simple you keep it.
Thank you.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, she was pulling out from Smith's King, the light, turning left on a 1900, and a truck ran a red light. And I have a picture of her
Okay.
car. I can't believe it was
You're
a
done. You're done?
2019, didn't even have 25,000 miles on it.
Okay.
so she has to get a new car now. I mean, it's a miracle. I mean, that's her car.
Yes.
She didn't get
Okay,
a scratch
yeah.
on her.
It's go time.
Okay. Brittany, are we ready? Perfect, thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody out to the Roy City Council for March 18th, 2025. The time is now 5:30. I want to welcome and recognize that we have Councilmember Jackson, Councilmember Saxton, Councilmember Wilson, Councilmember Scadden, and Councilmember Paul with us tonight. We appreciate everybody here. We'd ask Councilmember Jackson if she would lead us in a moment of silence, as well as the Pledge of Allegiance. Ann?
Please join me in a moment of silence. Please you repeat the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ann. Council, we have a consent item, specifically the January 2025 financial statements. Do you have any comments or questions before I ask Amber about some that I have? Okay, Amber, I sent you, I think, some in advance, so maybe you can help us walk through these. You want to read them?
Sure, I can do that.
Please, thank you.
Okay, so the first question was, the fund summary shows that we have received 94% of our property tax so far this year. Is that considered all that we will get between now and June 30th? And the answer is no. We continue to receive revenue through June.
Okay.
We actually receive a final settlement in March that is most of the remainder of that. I checked and we haven't received it yet. It'll probably come in next week.
Okay.
And then anything that we haven't received continues to come in through the end of June.
So we believe the 280,000 that's still outstanding to hit our budget is still possible, could come.
Yeah, should come in that final settlement next week.
Perfect, okay. Okay,
The next two questions I can answer together. They were related to the Transportation Infrastructure Fund. The one question was, we've only received year-to-date revenue of about 13.9%, and then we've only spent 1% of our expenditures for that fund. We have 4 large construction projects that were budgeted for in this fund, and all 4 of them have grants associated with that. Normally, when we receive grants, we pay all of the expenses for the project, and then we receive the grant in revenue. 3 of the 4 projects, because of where the funding is coming from, part of it's from the state, and so UDOT is actually going to be overseeing those projects. When we prepared the budget, we budgeted for all of the expenditures and all of the revenue because we thought we would be receiving the grants, but they are actually only billing us for our portion of the project. So we will only probably spend about half of what we've budgeted in expenses and have about half of it in revenue. So the 4th project, we are spending all of that, and we will get the grant reimbursement to pay for that one back.
you think you'll have those contracts let and operational between now and the end of the fiscal year?
They'll probably go into next year, and so we'll have to rebudget part of it.
Okay,
Yeah, and we actually will have 7 total that we are doing. We have 4 in the current year, and then with next year's budget, we'll have 7 total, so we have a
now,
lot.
one of those, Amber and Brandon, you'd know this, is one of those actually the roundabout on 31 and 6?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
I've
and
seen
we
a lot
have
of
started
activity.
on that one, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
We've done a
perfect.
little bit of work on that one. The last question was on the Park Development Fund. We have received 289% of revenue in that fund so far. This fund is just related to our park development fees. It's a little hard to budget for because I have to guess how many building permits we will issue in the next year because that's the only revenue that comes into this fund. So we have received more than what was budgeted, and it was mostly related to the rail runner development down there by the train tracks.
Okay.
So.
Okay, so would the ramp grant funds come into this particular, because I think Michelle, I think the 2 ramp grants that got approved, and Matt, you'll talk about that, were really for Parks and Rec.
Yeah, so they are not in this fund.
They're not in this one, okay?
Nope.
Council, any other questions or comments for Amber? Thank you, Amber, appreciate that. Okay, having said that then, do I have a motion then to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Thank you, Diane. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ann. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the consent items are approved. Thank you. This is a public comment period. Invite anybody and everybody who wants to talk to step up to the mic, give us your name and your address. Any topic you want to talk about, and specifically any topic that is going to be talked about tonight. If you have something you want to share, do it during the public comment period, because we never made any arrangements for comments during the presentations and the other elements that are going to be taking place. So please, come up, name and address. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Steve Thomas. My address is 3642 West. I'd like to start with Public Works and the wasteful spending of taxpayer dollars. I don't know if you know, but in 2022, 2023, Public Works spent $51,000 versus fire spending $21,000. And this year, Public Works is expected to spend $42,000 versus the police $32,000. I'm sorry, Public Works should never outspend first responders when it comes to training or resources, when there's plenty of opportunities locally for Public Works to fulfill their continuing education and training. Paid vacations to Chicago, St. Louis, Las Vegas, and St. George, just to name a few, are unnecessary. And most of the training is offered here at home. This would cut wages while team members are away, per diem, gas, hotel, flights, and if there are costs associated with these paid vacation training. Public Works just arrived back from one of these paid vacations, sent mostly employees that did not require credit training hours or had nothing to do with water certification. Paying these employees to be wined and dined by vendors without a true benefit to taxpayers of Roy City is wasteful and disrespectful. These times is when everybody is struggling to make ends meet. It seems like these trainings aren't working. There's consistent complaints about citizens of Roy regarding the conditions of our drinking water. Yes, I'm aware some of it can't be helped because of old pipes within citizens' property and hot water heaters and etc. However, I am aware that there are many opportunities where wasteful spending could benefit our citizens in redirecting the effects to repair probable areas where main breaks are consistent, and the city continues to apply Band-Aids to the situation instead of correcting the problem. My second concern at the center of wasteful spending is the amount of management versus under-management positions being paid at Roy City with taxpayer dollars. Public Works alone has 6 administrators, 6 superintendents, 5 foremen, 4 leadmen with only 12 labor and employees. Seems a little heavy. With other management listed as a public work inspector currently being considered. The infrastructure is stark contrast to cities around us. Why? Because it isn't cost effective and it's wasteful. Cutting half of those management titles would free up money to hire and retain direct report employees at a more competitive wage and better morale for employees that are consistently shorthanded during their busiest times of the year. Instead of it's expected for our under-management guys without titles to burn both ends of the candle and work hours that are far beyond unhealthy expectations. My third and final concern, while having spent time employed at Roy City, would be the stone-aged, handwritten time cards. An employee showing up to work at 6 a.m. for a very short meeting, followed by us all going and getting coffee and lunches or breakfast at local places around town and throughout the county. Lunches starting around 11 and they run till around about 1 p.m. with quitting time right at 3:30. If punching an actual time card was implemented and losing the ability to handwrite time, there'd be a lot less room for paid tardiness, excessive abuse of lunches, and padding hours. All great example of time card theft and the abuse of taxpayer dollars. My goal is in bringing all this up is to bring balance to Roy City. I believe an overhaul is needed to get away from the friends and family ethics of Public Works Department and implementing a nepotism policy and hold management accountable for the waste and neglect. Especially when most of these people that are running this don't even live in our city and aren't directly affected on how our facilities function. Hey, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, anybody else like to share a thought? Name and address. Thank you.
My name is Kevin Homer. I live at 5398 South, 4000 West here in Roy. I wanted to speak for just a minute about the item G1, which has to do with resolution 25-3. This is specifically about a resolution that will come before the city council tonight about safety at the Roy City Days coming up in August. I look at the resolution and I think it's quite appropriate, especially when in the therefore section that talks about what is going to be done to help out with security and safety. If you look at points 4 and 5 and 6, it says we will enforce the laws that we already have, whether it's disorderly conduct or verbal harassment or assault or whatever it is. It's just putting anybody on notice that wants to come here and cause a lot of trouble. We will enforce our laws. I chatted with Chief very briefly about this, and it seems like it's a really good thing for us to stand up and say we will enforce laws, even for people who want to come here and cause problems. Seems like a good idea for us to put them on notice that we will enforce the laws. My only concern is, and we can't control this, criminals are going to do crime. Anybody with evil in their hearts, they're just going to do bad things no matter what we say. But for us to stand and say we will enforce law, I think that's a good thing. So for this resolution, I would encourage you to vote for it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Anybody else like to share a thought? Name and address.
Dennis Brown, 2119 West, 6000 South, Roy. I just have a couple of questions or two comments. First of all, you know I'm a landlord, and I always talk about taxes every time I come and talk to you. But so this last week, we got our tax statements back from the accountant, and so I only raise rent every 2 years. And the 4 or 5 residents I have inside Roy City, I compare my fixed cost, insurance, property taxes. Oh, there's a third, it's a fixed cost. Water, sewer, and garbage, you know. And so the other costs I have in my rentals is based upon something breaking or something not breaking. And I do most of the maintenance in my house and my properties. So my average rent increase is between $50 and $120 per renter per month coming up, which I'm issuing this week. So I just wanted you to be aware of the increases in costs that is taking place as a landlord. The cost that you impose on us as far as property tax, I have to pass on to my renters. And I know you've talked about, I think your kids renting over the years or how much rent housing costs, but please try and keep the costs down as much as possible. And I'd like to know, I came to the council 2 weeks ago and Randy Skadden caught me out in the parking lot. You remember that, Randy? Because I was going to ask, where's the city at as far as trying to keep the costs down? I know last year we had a 10% property tax increase for the city. Are we within budget this year? Are we out of budget? Where are we at? I just want to have an idea.
Actually, at this moment, Dennis, I know the city manager is preparing. He has a responsibility to deliver a draft budget 1st of May to the city council. Okay. And so you'll bet to see that more than likely in the first meeting where we'll see it for the first time. And then we'll work through May and June, okay, and July, however long it takes for us to basically get through that process and approve it. So once we see it, it's public.
Okay. I know that this last year they had if you had a duplex, for example, you got an additional $20 per month for I think it's called capital improvement, then you had the water, sewer, and garbage on top of that. So it averaged about $15 per month per building on average for the buildings. So I just encourage you to try and keep the cost down as much as possible. The other question I had is on your number 5 here, consideration for ordinance change 25.2. It talks about maybe addressing the overall height of buildings in downtown Roy. Mm-hmm. If my memory serves me right, when we had the I think Jan was here, and Sophie or Paul was here as the city council. I can't remember who Ann was here, and Diane was here, and probably Brian was also. I think the overall height was approved like 60 feet on the east side for close to the 1900 west, like 80 feet, a little bit farther away from the 1900. What is the consideration here? I don't know where I could see that somewhere. What are you considering? How? It says here, changing the building height for overall height of the number of stories in the downtown area. So what are you looking at going to?
What's being considered right now is changing the language from feet, and so downtown Eastwood is in fact 80 feet. If you go back 100 feet, it's 100 feet.
Okay.
Changing that from feet to stories. Stories because it becomes more difficult for a developer or anybody to kind of figure out how to match that into 100 feet. And so that's what's being considered, just changing it from feet to stories.
Well, an average height would be 9 to 10 feet on most buildings, but I mean, someone could say a story is 20 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
And also the other proposal was to have 12 stories instead of 80 feet, go up to 12 stories.
Right.
And that would be a total of 172 feet possibly. So it would go from 80 feet to a possibility of 172 feet is what the changes have been proposed by the planning
That's a
commission.
massive change.
It is, which is why it's being discussed tonight.
My recommendation to the five of you is do not approve that. That's too tall for downtown Roy.
Okay, thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to share a thought? Okay. Name and address, please.
Hi there, my name's Alexis Jackson. I live at 5810 South, 4175 West, and that's just south of Emma Russell Park. I'm actually here about the soccer goals at Emma Russell Park. We've sent a couple of emails, one or two, but we wanted to get on the record in a public meeting with a quorum. We have observed the problem that the goals that are there seem to be largely unusable by the public, and we feel that the reason behind that is that there's a conflicting interest with the entity AYSO. It seems they have all the prime access to the goals during the prime season. Saturdays are largely reserved by that organization, and several weekdays after work when everyone is available to now play. Those have been reserved for games and such. I actually coach AYSO. My son's on a team, so I'm not suggesting that we evict AYSO, of course, in any way. But I also noticed that the city has seemed to define what the soccer season is and what the off season is based on AYSO's schedule. So from the very first practice to the end of the very last game, those goals are there on the field so that AYSO can access them. And then as soon as the last game is played, they are locked up in a parking lot or on the field so that no one else can now access them because AYSO has finished playing with them. My understanding is that AYSO has a deal with the city, is that in exchange for use of the public and other organizations with their goals, they have a discounted rate for reservation for those fields. So that the city doesn't have to buy or manage or whatever, the goals, that they kind of share that. And if my understanding of that deal is correct, that means that their fee for reservation of the field is subsidized by taxpayer dollars, which would of course be anyone who's a resident of the city of Roy. And if that is the case, then it's my opinion that the public should have reasonable access to the goals, even during the season. I just think there needs to be a better balance between AYSO and the general public and the residents of Roy City and those who use the goals. I'm part of a very big group, about 40 people who we just play pickup games on Saturday mornings, and we try to squeeze our time into the available time when AYSO is not on the goals. And then during the summer, they have been locked up. In the last couple of years. I actually spoke with Michelle Howard, and she was very kind to take my call, and she told me that she would consider lengthening out the season, what they consider to be the soccer season, or even leaving them up during the summer. When I talked to her and to Sophie Paul, thank you for taking my call as well, and I also spoke with Sean Marshall at AYSO, who's the guy over Roy. My understanding was that there are two main concerns with the city with doing that. One of those is vandalism, and it's not a surprise. I live right south of the park. We walk through our gate to the park. We know there's been vandalism with the bathrooms, with the backstops at the baseball field, with the playground, and I'm certain, although I haven't seen it myself, I don't deny that it's possible that vandalism has happened to those goals as well. The other issue that I that has been expressed to me that is a concern with leaving up the goals too long is the health of the fields. That's the reason I understand that they have portable goals and not just standing erected goals in, so that you don't that box doesn't get too dirty. It stays good, and the health of the fields is important, and that's important to me too. So I'm hoping that we can get together. I'm looking forward to a possible work session. We have done some research on this. We've talked to several cities. We've gotten some information from AYSO, from Michelle, and we're hoping to be able to propose some actual resolutions for those two concerns rather than just locking up our access to the goals. I don't feel like that's an appropriate way to deal with the situation, but I am interested in being part of the solution. And that should just about take care of it. So thank you so much for your time. We'll follow up with an email.
Thank you. Trying to write all that down. Thank you. Anybody else like to share a thought? Round two?
I am still Kevin Homer,
So-
and
He did have his opportunity. If you open it up for him, you have to open it up for everybody.
Okay.
And it would also be going forward, and the problem is you haven't allowed people in the past to come back up a second time.
that's true.
So he'd have to probably just, best advice would be email or contact council, other means.
That's a good point, Kevin. Thank you. Okay. Send us an email. Thanks. Anybody else like to share a thought? We certainly want to have input, any topic. Okay. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to the presentations. First presentation, Audrey, I think you're going to talk to us about 3500 and specifically the UDOT's widening project. So,
Yeah, we do.
Council, I believe you have a copy of the presentation that is in fact in front of you.
Great. Well, thanks for having us. We have been meeting monthly for a little while with Matt and with the mayor, and so it's nice to meet the rest of you. But my name's Aubrey Benyon. I work for David Evans and Associates. We are, and this is Bob Clegg. We work for the engineering firm that was hired by UDOT to complete the design and oversee the environmental reevaluation and do the public outreach associated with this widening of this road. I will start by saying you call it 3500 West. Clinton calls it 2000 West, and West Haven calls it Midland Drive. So we call it SR 108 because that's just what it is. That's the easiest way to go about it. So anyway, if you want to advance to the next slide. Bob, do you want to just talk kind of some overview?
Yeah, so just as kind of an overview for this project, the project itself begins down in Clinton, just north of 1800 North, where you've seen all the construction down there. And this project will extend that widening that's happening down there up through Roy, up through 4800 South, and all the way up to just south of 4275 South.
Let me just ask Bob real quick. Everybody hear the conversation in the back? Okay. Okay, if you can, just
You
move
want
the
us to
mic.
keep getting really, really close to the
That's
microphone?
better.
Is that better?
You're good, but I need to hear Bob.
Yeah.
Please, Bob.
Dive in.
All right, I'll
Thank
do
you.
that. So just so everybody is aware, right now the project value that we're looking at for the entire project, this is a UDOT project, is around $210 million for everything. And that's
What
looking
is included
forward.
in everything, Bob?
And that's looking forward to 2028. But that includes all of the roadway reconstruction that needs to happen. It includes the right-of-way purchases that need to happen, all of the upfront design and environmental work that's happening right now, as well as some of the utility relocations that will happen as part of this also. So does that answer
that was good.
all of it?
That was good.
Okay. As far as schedule goes, the project first of all started out last summer, starting to look at some of the environmental reevaluation and some of the very preliminary design efforts. And since then, we've been able to progress the design a little bit. We're up to around a 30% design, so still very, very preliminary, but we're advancing the environmental reevaluation, and we've gotten to the point where UDOT is just barely starting to approach some property owners about right-of-way acquisition and purchases that need to happen. So that'll continue through the next year and a half, actually 2 years. because we have a lot of right-of-way that's going to need to be purchased, and it's going to take a long time to get through that process. But then, starting the spring of 2027 and running through fall of 2029 is the plan for construction to start on this project.
I'll add, in terms of the right-of-way, the environmental document that was completed in 2008, there were properties that were identified then as total purchases, homes that were going to be bought out in whole. UDOT can acquire those at this phase, as well as properties from willing sellers. And then other homes where we need to purchase, a couple feet here or there, that goes through, following a pretty steady design where we know more surely how much space we need to purchase. So in total, I think there's 200 or so properties between these three cities that we'll need to acquire some, or even do, a temporary construction easement from. So the properties that we're acquiring right now are those that were the total purchases identified early in the environmental document and the willing sellers, but we have not yet begun those sliver parcels. And I will say, for you all and for everyone back here, right-of-way is a really complicated thing, and every parcel has its own components and its own, pieces and parts, and it's not exactly helpful to compare notes across from neighbor to neighbor. Our approach will be, now that we've gotten through this 30% design and we know where that alignment is set, where we will begin probably on the south end in Clinton, but our public outreach team will start with property owner meetings. We'll invite about 10 people at a time and explain to them what the timeline looks like, what the process looks like. I know it can be a scary thing. It's your livelihoods that we're playing with, we're messing with, that, there's a lot of questions that folks have. And so we want to explain and educate about UDOT's process and property owners' rights, and realistically what the timeline looks like for one homeowner to expect over the other. If we started with 200 properties all at the same time, there would be a lot of people waiting a very long time to get to the next phase. So UDOT likes to go 10 properties at a time, and it's a lot more digestible that way, so people aren't waiting and kind of strung out on what's the next step. So we anticipate that those meetings will start to invite, like I said, starting on the south end, but probably in April or so we'll start, and we'll just keep moving our way north.
Okay, thank you.
So this will be basically starting from 6,000 by Winco.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
and then going
in your city
in
limits,
Roy.
but when
Yeah,
we're
in
saying on
Roy.
the south end, I'm going to say starting at about 1,800 north in Clinton, moving our way north.
So people that live farther north might not know on the east or the west side of the road whether their property, they won't know maybe till the end of this year whether, is there any way they can?
It'll move faster than that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And we can talk about it in a minute, but on the last slide of our presentation is a link to our project website, and we have a GIS, an interactive map that shows our roadway line work. So folks have been able to look at that map and have a rough idea of where things are.
Okay.
Up until this 30% spot, we've held, some room of let us get to 30% so that we know more certainly what those impacts look like. But now that we're here, I think we have a better idea of what to expect.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Anyway.
Okay.
If you want to go to that next slide.
Do you want to talk through the objectives?
No, I just talked a lot.
Okay. I'll kind of run us through some of the objectives of this project. As you are all well aware, there's a lot of traffic that's grown over the years, and 3500 West has borne a significant brunt of a lot of that traffic. And so that is one of the project objectives, is to meet the current as well as the projected future traffic demands. In addition to that, the facility, the SR 108 that we're rebuilding, is going to be able to support different modes of transportation. We're planning on having a multi-use path on one side, a sidewalk on the other, and that will help facilitate pedestrians as well as bicycles and other modes of transportation that would use those facilities, as well as the 2 lanes each direction that will accommodate traffic also throughout the corridor. We want to make sure that this facility is safe and efficient in, conveying traffic. So we're working very closely with UDOT to make sure that the traffic signals will have that interconnection, make sure that they function as best they can, as well as making sure that we're complying with the state and federal standards for safety requirements along the corridor. And then, finally, a major objective is making sure that we're working with each of the cities along the corridor, Clinton, Roy, as well as West Haven, just to make sure that we're coordinating, the improvements that are happening, trying to help make sure that those are meeting the city's needs as well as the UDOT needs for transportation along the corridor. Anything you wanted to add?
Just that this typical section that we show here, this matches what we are constructing down in Clinton and West Point right now, which also matched the section right before that throughout West Point. So it's 2 12-foot lanes in each direction, a 14-foot median in the middle. We'll have 8-foot shoulders. And then, like Bob mentioned, that multi-use path is going to look like a very wide sidewalk. That's what it'll be on one side. It's a 12-foot wide sidewalk with that park strip that is kind of the buffer between the curb and the walking path. That's where your utilities are going to go, and that's where signage goes and things. So what you see us constructing down south is what you'll see here.
Perfect.
Okay, let's just kind of talk about I know we've already talked about what some of the activities are that we're doing right now. But maybe just to kind of supplement that, right now there's we're looking at a pedestrian crossing down around 2050 North. So this is down in Clinton. There'll be a grade separated crossing of SR 108 right there. That's underway, and that started this month, and that will be combined with this project as well. Did you want to talk about the landscaping?
Yeah, so in our meetings that we've had so far with the administration, we have talked about setting, all of the UDOT projects have a landscape and aesthetics budget, and that would be, do you want black powder-coated power poles versus just the galvanized steel, additional lighting, each city kind of has their own features. If you go to Clinton, it's those hanging baskets with all the flowers in them, so there is room for a landscape and aesthetics within our project budget. We're working right now to identify what that dollar value is and divvying it out proportionally to how much of it is within Clinton City, so much of this project is within Roy. So, what proportion of that budget Roy gets. And then we want to make it as cohesive as we can. So we're working on getting a meeting with all of our city managers so that they can put their brains together and make some decisions on what that budget will go to. It's not everyone has to agree all the way, and it's not kind of one or nothing, but we just want to make sure that it's an attractive and a good-looking facility up and down.
Perfect.
Maintainable. We want it to be maintainable.
Yeah.
I will mention as well that we've been working closely with the cities on, what we can do with the stormwater detention as well. So we've been working closely with that. We mentioned that we already mentioned that we've been working with some of the property owners, are starting to work with property owners on the right-of-way acquisition. We've also engaged the utility companies along the corridor and started discussions with them about some of the utilities that may need to be relocated outside of where they're at currently, and just what we need to do in order to accommodate the facility. So, and then I also wanted to mention as well, you guys are well aware of the 5600 South project, and one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we don't have to go back through that piece of the corridor and redo that. So we're trying to make sure that we're tying into that corridor as best we can without having to do any rework on that intersection. Perfect. So that'll hopefully save some headache there. So
like it. Thank you.
And I think that's it, right?
I'm gonna go to the next one. Oh yeah, so there's our slide. We Like I mentioned, the next big activity for the public outreach team is to make contact with the property owners so that we can have these small group meetings with the folks who are directly, thank you, directly facing the corridor. But anyone is available. You know, you can reach out to our team at all times. We have a project website, like I said, with the map, the GIS map. It's updated monthly, I would say. This one,
Every couple of weeks.
yeah. So the line work, we've got a much more complicated map on our end that we use internally that shows cuts and fills and utilities and all those sorts of things. But for the public, we keep it pretty simple with the line work and the striping of, you know, where the roadway, curb, gutter, sidewalk, and that kind of stuff goes. So I believe that's linked on between our sites, but yeah, this information is available to the public and always available to call us and reach our team.
So just out of curiosity, how many miles is Clinton? How many miles is West Haven? And how many miles of that road is Roy? Do you know offhand?
I
Just
don't
out
know.
of
I know in total
curiosity.
the project is about 3 miles,
Yep.
and a lot of it is in Roy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah.
I want to say about 2/3 of it's in Roy, or more, 2/3 to 3/4 of it.
So when you have that walking path I saw on that picture, is there any kind of thing that, like, there's so many distracted drivers nowadays. I just hate people running along there or kids and stroll, you know, and then having someone spill something or texting, and then I just don't know if there any protection, anything.
It's
or
really just going to look like a wide sidewalk. So
That okay?
imagine there's not a protection
any kind of
in
barrier,
any, yeah,
kind of
it would just
fencing or
be
anything.
the
So
sidewalk.
just the curb and gutter, like
Yeah,
some
that
sidewalk. Okay.
the park strip is 4 feet.
Okay.
So you'll have that between the back of the curb and about 4 feet. It's a stamp stained concrete, similar to what I mean. They've constructed that path on 56. That one's made of asphalt. We're aiming for concrete.
Yeah,
So
that
it will
would
look
nice.
very similar to what you have there.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
if
Okay.
you can imagine
Yeah.
that.
And would you just repeat then, you said that there were 2 12-foot lanes, a 14-foot median, and then what were the widths of the other?
8 foot shoulder.
Yeah.
And then it was, again, for the walking, it was a total of,
So
On
4 foot
one side
sidewalk?
of the street, it'll be, is it 5 or 6 with the sidewalk? And the other side, it's a 10 to 12 foot path.
okay, thanks.
And then just for everybody that's in the audience that is probably curious, just email that SR108@utah.gov with updates in the subject line, and they'll email you anything as far as what's going on with the project, things of that nature. It helps to keep you informed.
Yeah.
Okay, council, any other comments, questions for our UDOT team here?
Nope.
We thank you so much. And
Thank
please
you.
come back when you feel like it's ready for the next significant change, maybe by the end of the year. That would be perfect.
Yeah.
Normally, and help us if you see the same thing, the widening of SR 108, by every definition, is certainly going to impact a lot of people that's on that. You mentioned 200 properties. But the changes that are going to be coming, okay, particularly in development, is going to impact a lot more than just those people living there. I guess my point would be is that can we anticipate at some point in time you will hold more of an open house discussion where the public can come and ask questions, see the vision? Certainly at this moment, a lot of people will be interested, but more importantly, to your point, let the people who are going to be directly impacted have the first shot, let them
Yeah.
get engaged.
Yes, and let the design develop a little bit further. I think
Okay.
we might be able to answer a few questions, but not all the questions, and so that might be a frustrating thing for us to couch every response with, well, we don't know quite yet, you know. So let's let the design just get a little bit further down the
Yeah.
line, and then we'll present all the information into the
And
public.
then we'll find a place, you'll find a place, we'll help you find a place, and then invite the public,
This is going to be the place.
to come and just come and see.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
like it.
Thanks,
Okay,
everyone.
well, thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Bye.
Perfect. Council, for edification, to Dennis's point earlier, you're aware that we, in fact, there was an increase in the water costs. Roy City needs to come up, Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong, but needs to come up about $5 million because we're going to change out all the infrastructure under the current SR 108. to be ready for this significant improvement. So we need to get that capital in place so we can start getting ourselves ready for that. So, okay, a lot of things happening with that. We'll watch it unfold. The only thing I can offer, if you get questions, much like we did when we were dealing with SR 97, which happens to be 3500 or 5600 South, we try to direct all of the real important questions right to this team. They're responsible, to provide answers to the public, and my recommendation would be is, if you get questions, say, hey, reach out to these people. If you don't get a response, we certainly can help with that, but they've been pretty good in the past about answering. So your questions and the public's questions, let's direct it to this team, okay? Okay, thank you. I think we got, Sergeant Tubbs, I think we've got a Employee of the Month opportunity here, so I think you're going to lead the conversation. Thank you.
Mayor, council members, thanks for having me here. I was going to read this, but it's usually easier for me to just go off the cuff and discuss people that way. So you may or may not know, but every year the investigations and the administrative sergeant rotate through. And we rotate into whatever cases the detectives are working at that time. And we are learning immediately on the run what's going on and how quickly it's going to happen. And in January of this year, I came in and took over the investigations division with a variety of seasoned officers, be it people with 4 to 5 years of experience or, over a decade of experience, but all hard workers, hard chargers, and people that are interested in doing work and arresting bad guys and closing cases appropriately. And I was told ahead of time in a meeting that Detective Krieger, who's behind me, hopefully, and hasn't run out of the building yet, was working on a series of cases, all separate but related, regarding massage parlors within the city of Roy. We learned about these through direct complaints from citizens and through, I believe, the state of Utah and their task force that deals with this, that does stings and whatnot throughout the state. And we've investigated before, we've served search warrants, and we've never been completely successful in ridding ourselves of this issue. And when I came in, Detective Krieger had worked with the state, had worked with multiple agencies, and had introduced a plan where we would simultaneously hit 4 separate massage parlors at the same time, seize any evidence of crimes, and then work towards shutting those businesses down, revoking their licenses, working with the city of Roy, with what I understand are some recent changes to some business license policies and whatnot. And he did successfully do that. He did that within 2 months, I believe, of me being back here. It's now March. Those 4 businesses have been shuttered, and I believe that that is outstanding work on his part because it was a long day, and he maintained a phenomenal attitude and sense of humor. He is just a wonderful person overall to work with, but maybe that's because he's from Wisconsin originally. I'm from Detroit originally, and I feel his personality and mine work together well. But I also think everybody else seems to like him pretty good too. And it's for those reasons, that case, and just overall the attitude back there, the environment back there, and his ability to work with everyone at any time and bring some intelligence to conversations sometimes when they start to go off the rails, that I believe he's deserving of Employee of the Month for the city of Roy, for what he brings to the city. And we're also lucky to have him back after a short trip away from us to another agency. He did start his career here at Roy, and now he's back with us, and I don't think he's gonna go anywhere if we can help it, so. Anyways, this award's for you, Mark. And I hope you're here, so there you go, bud.
Excellent, thank you.
And I appreciate you, and we appreciate everything you do.
Mark, would you mind making a comment?
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm not sure what you really want me to say. It's appreciated. A lot of people helped out on this as well, so it definitely was not just me.
But it's nice to get some recognition for it.
Okay.
That's what I got.
Perfect.
Well, thank you for coming back.
Yes.
Comments,
Taking it
council?
back.
Council,
Well
any
done.
comments you'd like to make?
Well done.
A great benefit for the city. We appreciate that very much.
Yeah. I will tell you, Detective, one of the interesting things, a lot of people talk about what happened that day in Roy, because it was pretty significant. First, I think it was surprised that first, not in our little Mayberry, does this kind of stuff happen.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is it does. Your team sees it probably better and more than anybody else sees it. I think there was a lot of calmness, okay, that came from a lot of people who obviously had witnessed things and needed to see what Roy City was going to do to solve it. And I think you brought a lot of comfort to knowing that in fact, you heard them, you understood, and you were taking action and you implemented. I will just indicate to you, when I was in a meeting with all the mayors, they were impressed. In our little Mayberry, okay, you stepped up, you addressed the issue, and you helped clean it and make it better. That doesn't happen every day, and it certainly didn't get the visibility every day that you do. But in that case, it got the attention of a lot of people. So I say to you, well done, okay? Recognizing there's a lot of hands that were touching this, but the team recognized you as being the leader of this effort, and we appreciate you doing that for us. You made our city just a lot better today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt, would you give that to him? Pass that to him, would you? Detective, wait just 1 second, if you would, Matt. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to have, just for the record then, I'd like to take a motion to recognize Detective Mark Kruger as the Employee of the Month. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Randy, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, third.
Second and third. Brian, I'll do that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say nay. None opposed. Thank you, council. We do have some action items that we need to work through. Michelle, I believe you're going to step up and help us with the resolution 25-3.
Mayor and council, thank you for having me here with you today. I am here for resolution 25-3. This is a resolution declaring Emma Russell Park a safe zone on August 1st, 2025, and George Wallen Park a safe zone on August 2nd, 2025, in coordination with our 2025 Roy Days events. Roy Days is a long-standing community event that brings together residents and visitors to enjoy festivities, entertainment, and community pride. Given the large-scale public gathering that occurs in coordination with executive staff, we feel a formal safe zone declaration is an important step in reinforcing the city's commitment to public safety and upholding a welcoming, family-friendly environment on those days. Parks and Recreation recommends that the council adopt Resolution 25-3, establishing those safe zones. And with that, myself or Chief Gwen are happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Council, any questions?
I have a quick one. The date, why the date August 1st? Is it through? Should it read August 1st through August 2nd for both of them, or are you just doing one and then the other?
So we decided to do two because August 1st, the events are held at Emma Russell Park, and then August 2nd, the Saturday, is when all of those events are held at George Wallen.
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions before I ask mine? Michelle, between you and the chief, maybe you can help us a little bit understanding in terms of the difference between the normal protections that we provide to our Roy Days and how safe zones now may help change that.
So logistically, it's not going to change anything we're doing, but what it does do is it sends a message proactively early and sets a precedent that we're going to have a zero tolerance policy. but it's really not going to change anything we're doing in practice.
Okay. So this is just a public announcement. We're serious, and you need to watch out that we're going to get serious when we're in this event.
Correct.
Okay. Council, any comments?
So how will that word, are you going to advertise that like in Roy Day's advertising that, or anything so kids know?
That could put, that would be up to the Roy Days Committee, how they want to
Okay.
message that, signage, all those things. That'll still be a work in progress and be part of the discussion as we move forward.
Is this terminology something that is understood to be different than what we normally do?
I couldn't tell you how others are going to interpret it. It's not going to change our practice, but if others believe that it may, then I'm okay with them believing that.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay, then, do I have a motion then to approve Resolution 25-3, declaration of Roy Day, by the Roy City Council of Emma Russell Park and George Wallen Park would be designated as safe zones for Roy Days on August 1st and 2nd of 2025.
So moved.
Thank you, Randy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Brian. This is a roll call vote. Brittany?
Councilmember Wilson,
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton,
Aye.
Councilmember Scadden,
Aye.
Councilmember Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson.
Aye.
Okay. Resolution 25-3 is approved. Thank you. Michelle, I think you're going to leap right into Resolution 25-4.
Yes, thank you very much. Resolution 25-4 is a resolution amending and adopting the fee schedule at the Roy Aquatic Center. Every few years, we want to evaluate our aquatic center's pricing structure. This year, after a review of our rates, consideration of the facility upgrades, and benchmarking against similar facilities, staff felt it was important that adjustments needed to be made. You can see the adjustments on the resolution. On average, it just changed the daily admission by 27%. That puts us in line with other facilities of our similar stature. And we elected to go with a flat admission rate as opposed to doing a resident versus non-resident. It's pretty cumbersome to ask those questions when you're pushing everybody through the gates. We did want to keep the residency benefit, and that comes into play once you start to purchase passes, which is similar to the concept that we have at the complex where the residency benefit comes in when you're starting to do the memberships and things like that. The 10-punch pass pricing was adjusted to $1 off of the admission for residents. That's consistent with the complex. And then we switched the Bowery rental because you're getting a complete service. We switched that to a flat fee as opposed to the resident versus non-resident rate on that. It's consistent with the facility rental, so. And with that, Parks and Rec recommends council adopt Resolution 25-4, amending the Aquatic Center fee schedule. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, council, any comments, questions to Michelle?
Nope, I just think this is a great idea. You needed to do this, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hearing none, then, council, do I have a motion then to approve consideration of Resolution 25-4, amending the fees to the Roy Aquatic Center admissions and the pavilion rentals and adopting the Roy Aquatic Center fee schedule?
So moved.
Thank you, Ann.
Second.
Do I have a second? And I do. Thank you, Sophie. This is a roll call vote. Brittany?
Councilmember Scadden,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson,
Aye.
Councilmember Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton.
Aye.
Okay, council, thank you. We've approved Resolution 25-4. Now we have consideration of Resolution 25-5. Matt Wilson is going to talk this one. It's a resolution amending fees for building inspections, plan reviews, and other construction code fees. Matt?
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, staff's requesting that this be tabled so that we can address a number of concerns and questions that have come up, and then we do anticipate having it ready for our next city council meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate that.
Council, then, any comments or questions before I go for a motion then to approve tabling Resolution 25-5? Any questions, comments?
I appreciate it, so
Yeah.
that's my,
Okay.
thank you.
Lots of questions, so it's good.
You're getting a lot of appreciation here, Matt. So, man, I don't-
Intended, but like I said, that's a lot to take in really super fast, so.
Okay. So therefore, we're not going to pass resolutions, so this one is a little different. Then do I have a motion then to table Resolution 25-5?
Motion to table 25-5, a resolution amending fees for building inspection plan reviews and other construction code fees.
I'm glad you read that, thank you. And do I have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you. Diane, okay. All in favor of tabling Resolution 25-5, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and table that with a plan to bring that back to the city council within a couple of weeks. Thank you. Okay, consideration of Resolution 25-6, a resolution of the Roy City Council adopting interlocal agreement between Roy City Corporation and the Roy Water Conservative District, approving and authorizing the execution of interlocal agreement for the replacement of existing water lines. Brandon.
Mayor, Council, thanks for having me tonight. So yeah, I'm here for consideration of Resolution 25-6. The resolution for Roy City Council adopting an interlocal agreement between Roy City and the Roy Water Conservancy District. This is basically for a reimbursement. So we worked together with Roy Water Conservancy to get a game plan together to replace the water lines below the roundabout that's scheduled to go in on 6,000 South, 3,100 West. And we thought that it would work better if we went in together on a contract. That way we're not opening up the road multiple times to replace those water lines. So this is basically just an agreement between us and them for them to reimburse us once, because we will be, you know, paying for the initial contract and then they will reimburse us for their amounts. So that was in the contract as well as it was broke out into two sections. So our water line versus their water line. So.
Okay. Council, any comments or questions for Brandon?
When was this going to start? When are they going to get started on that?
So I actually
roundabout?
reached out to the contractor earlier this week and he said he's good to start on Monday, so.
If it's approved tonight,
Yep,
they'll
if it's
start Monday.
approved, yep, if
And
everything's
then
approved.
the whole project, like the
So
roundabout.
the roundabout, it actually, it went out to bid, it closes Tuesday, and then it's going through UDOT, so they probably are thinking they'll probably be a month going through the contract before they actually award it. So we're hoping to see construction the beginning of May. And they have a 90-day window from when they start, so, I mean, we're projecting to be done.
So those houses right there around that, like, that little one on the southeast corner, will that be gone?
No, so we're not taking any houses. We've bought in property
Okay.
to get the roundabout to fit in
Okay.
there, but no houses will go
Okay,
anywhere.
that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Good questions. Any other questions, council? Okay, then my only question I have, Brandon, would be is that do you believe you're able to get the lines replaced before the secondary water is turned on?
Yeah, he's very confident if we get it signed and he starts Monday, he'll be done well before secondary is
Perfect.
ready to turn on.
Okay, with that then, council, do I have a motion to approve Resolution 25-6, a resolution of the Roy City Council adopting an interlocal agreement between Roy City Corporation and the Roy Water Conservative District approving and authorizing the execution of an interlocal agreement for the replacement of existing water lines?
So moved.
Thank you, Ann. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Diane. This is a roll call vote. Brittany?
Councilmember Jackson.
Aye.
Councilmember Paul.
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson.
Aye.
Councilmember Scadden.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Resolution 25-6 is approved. Thank you, Brittany. If we can get that set tonight, I'll sign it before I go home, okay? We can get that started. You'll be ready for Monday. Thank you, council. We have now the consideration of ordinance 25-2. This is consideration amending the Title 10 zoning regulation, amending then Chapter 13, mixed use, 3 building types, 3 storefronts, general stoop, limited bay, and large format, and civic, changing building heights from the overall height to a number of stories allowed within the zone, the downtown zone. Brody, I believe you're talking this one.
Mayor, Council, thank you. So yes, this is 25-2 and 25-3 kind of run together. We'll talk about 25-2, but 25-3 is certainly anxiously waiting to hear what happens on 25-2 before we really dive into 25-3. And really how this came about is the project that's concerned on 25-3. It's the Echelon project. And basically the way it started is the original persons who brought the hotel is Sunset Builders. They worked really diligently to get a hotel built and basically just ran out of room to provide a hotel that the market would sustain. It's just not a big enough property. I know there was some work to try and acquire additional land that fell through. They actually were under contract to sell the property to a different developer who wanted to do a very similar project to what's before you. And those developers basically ran into costs because a couple of issues out of our control, but the issue in our control is the height restriction in that zone. If we go back into the history, when this zone was changed, the council was really looking to add some flexibility in that zone along 1900 to kind of revitalize and redevelop that area. The original plan called for a definition of stories that each property could build. The council at that time didn't accept that, which is fine, so that they came up with the height limit of 40, 60, and I believe it's 80 feet in the accompanying zones. What we're finding out in talking specific to Sunset Builders, but also with quite a bunch of other persons looking at property along 1900, is that the height restriction really limits the kind of product that they can bring to the area. And so in looking at ways to help not only this project, but the city as a whole, we brought this, both the development agreement and the text amendment to the zone to Planning Commission and then here tonight. I'll speak a little bit about Planning Commission. So Planning Commission reviewed this, looked at it, and quite frankly, they had very little issues. They held a public hearing. I believe there was only one person who spoke at that who was a little leery of what the overall maximum height maybe should be, but overall thought it was beneficial to the area. The Planning Commission actually talked and said they had really no issues with changing that. They liked the property owners having the flexibility to create a product that was appropriate and market-driven and sustained itself. Towards the end of the conversation, Chair Cowley mentioned specific to the, and I got to say this right, downtown east, which is, as we're looking up here, is what I call orange. I don't know colors for everyone, but it's essentially the eastern part between Riverdale Road and about 5700 on the east side of 19. They just had a...
That's excellent.
Because they couldn't hear.
Almost.
Okay.
I can't bend down any more than that. All right, so Chair Cowley mentioned and essentially brought up the idea of extending the height specific to that zone. He says, why do we have 8 stories? Why isn't it 10? Why isn't it 12? Why aren't the property owners, if they can build something that's big and nice, why can't they have that option? The Planning Commission agreed, and they forwarded the recommendation to change it essentially where the downtown gateway, which I say is the pink, would be a 4-story cap of maximum height. Downtown west, which would be the darker pink purple, of a 6-story building. And then they did change the downtown east from what would have been an 8-story, which is consistent with the zone currently, a similar change anyway. They said, no, that should be a 12-story building. So that's what was forwarded onto the city council. So now I'm going to step back and really a couple of things have been happening. I know that I talked with the Economic Development Committee a couple weeks ago, and I believe Mr. Andrews agrees with this. We are having more conversations with people interested in Roy in the last, I would say, 6-8 weeks than we have in the last 3 years. I think there's quite a few reasons for that. I think a main driver is everybody in that world sees 56 a completion date in sight. They see 56 being done with that interchange with the road, with that infrastructure. They see 1900 as something that could change and is ready to be changed and that the market supports. Another big thing is Northrop Grumman up there and the jobs that they bring. I know the mayor's had multiple meetings. We've had conversations. I think the problem that Northrop's running into is that there's not enough housing in this area to support the people that they're bringing in. So the developers whose livelihood it is to create projects are interested in Roy. Just to be frank and honest with the council, you have 5 or 6 different development companies watching this meeting right now. Okay, so the interest is there. The constant feedback we hear is that they like a lot of things that we did to be proactive and create these zones along 1900. However, the height restrictions just make projects unworkable in Roy. Specific to Sunset Builders, and I don't want to divulge too much, but to build the building at 40 feet cap versus a 4-story where they had flexibility, or even granting them per the development agreement an extra 8 or 10 feet, it's almost $1 million in construction costs. So that is the viability of that project, is the height restriction. So we really tried to get a code that allows some flexibility in that area to where a person can come in, a landowner can come in and have some discretion on building a product that works. If they need a commercial floor on the bottom that's 15 feet high, they can do it. The proposed language for the text amendment, it does say if you go above a certain height, that counts as 2 stories, which makes sense, right? You can't have a 4-story building that's all 30 feet high. That's not what we're trying to say. But you know, one of the things that came up in Planning Commission, and a good thing to think about, is with the maximum height of each floor, you can have a commercial on the bottom, then you can have apartments, townhomes, however you wanted to phrase it, but you can also have a taller top roof, maybe a more penthouse type vibe. And I know, you know, when I've said that, I've been ridiculed a little bit by some persons who've talked to me about it. And like, Roy's prepped and ready to support that kind of product, right? The developers aren't going to waste their time and money talking to myself, Mr. Andrews, and putting forth engineering and site plans unless they think that product is going to work for them and worth their time and money. So with that being said, the request in 25-2, I know there's some question and some strong feelings about what the height should be. I will kick that back to you of what type of stories, but the flexibility, quite frankly, is needed for the economic development, especially along 1900 and Roy. You know, we hear constantly from the public and public comment about what are we doing with our budget, what are we doing with our taxes. It's tough, right, Royce? It's tough. These type of things are a way to promote growth. You know, we talk a lot about sales tax, and I want as much sales tax as you can. The harsh, maybe it's not harsh, but the reality is that the most productive product per acre from a property tax base is a mixed-use commercial building or a townhouse type structure if you have enough acreage. That produces the most property tax revenue for the general fund of the city. So that's where we're at. We're bringing this to you to hopefully provide some flexibility to these property owners that really have some grandiose visions for what 1900 West could be in Roy. So,
okay, thank you, Brody. Council, comments, questions? Who'd like to start?
I'll jump in.
Thank you.
certainly as I have talked with developers, builders, and that sort of thing, I can see where the stories concept is, because the height of floors has changed, and I see how we've added some mandates there. So we're asking for flexibility for stories, but then we've added some mandates for the size. However, within that regard, this is a very big project. This is a very big change. And we have definitely, I think, maybe forgotten to look at the study. We did a specific study that, as I recall, was about $14,000 just for this particular thing. And when I was able to pull up that study, here are, well, actually, let me just backtrack a bit. So if we say we want to change the 80-foot to 12 stories, that goes from 80 feet to 172 feet possible height. That's a very big difference. If you go from the 60 feet to 6 stories, that is 60 feet to 88 feet. That's a big difference. And when you start looking at some of those areas that had 60 feet, a lot of those are right next to homes. Now, they have a stepwise, component to this, but that's a big difference. I mean, you're looking out your door to a 90-foot place, possibly. Even 4 stories, if we go from 40 feet to 4 stories, is 60 feet. And so when we take a look at the reality of it, we certainly want to encourage development, but I do believe there is something in between. If we look at the results of the 2021 survey, over 72% of people wanted, and this is in the downtown area on Downtown East, less than 60-foot high 5 stories. 36%, so half of those, wanted it less than 40%. Now, when you go through the comments, they do talk about saying that they do want some of them want mixed use, some of them don't want any apartments, some do. And we do know over time that people do want development. We do know that they want to have growth, economic development, but I do believe that there needs to be some sort of a balance, because we do represent the citizens. So we represent them on the side of trying to help their taxes, increase in economic growth, but we also need to help balance what some of their desires, because, is this what we want? Is this what they want for Roy? And can there be something in between? Some of the comments, actually several of the comments said, we do not want to end up like Clearfield. We don't want to be in a tunnel. We don't want all that height. Well, right now, it's 15 feet back, and then you can go up 6 stories possibly. That's 15 feet back from 1900, you can go up 88 feet. Well, that's pretty high. I mean, if you just go down Clearfield where they're talking about it, that's 4 stories, and I couldn't get an exact height on it, but that's probably around 50 feet at least, because it doesn't look like it's the higher levels to the 60. So I believe that maybe we need to consider things, but what I think is absolutely excellent is that we have this development agreement, which allows us a place to start. Wow, how nice for us to be able to, and I like how it's got 4 stories and or 50 feet, because as I was talking to other people who are doing this in other areas and cities, they said some cities only have stories, but a lot of them do have a mix. They say an and or, and I think that that's a really good way to start. And then we have a development agreement that we can let the citizens see what's there. We can see how this project works. We have great excitement for it, at least a lot of people that I know talking about it, but we haven't completely taken over and not been true to our residents, because when they came to those meetings, when they answered that survey, we had a commitment to them that we were going to listen to them. And I know that we need to balance on both sides, because they do want development. But I do not believe at this time that this representation of this zoning change is true to our citizens and is a good way to jump in right now. To have 1 weekend to look at this, to have 1 weekend to study this very super huge change that took us a year and a half or 2 years to go over in the past, I believe is disingenuous and is not appropriate step. Although I will jump right in and say that I do believe that the development agreement is a great way to go, and I appreciate that effort. So those are some of my thoughts right now.
Okay. Council, other comments?
Sure. I'm just going to lead with an adage. And the adage is, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. We are at
That's pretty profound.
I'm here all day.
Did you write that down?
No, I say it all the time. It's one of my like can phrases. Also, like, plagiarism is the highest form of flattery. Things like that. It's a Randyism. But what we have consistently heard from our constituency base is that, Dennis is in the back room right now telling us, don't raise my property taxes because on my rental properties, because that's a pass-through cost. We're at an inflection point right now to where we have developers that are actively wanting to come in and go through and develop that corridor down there. They just don't have the correct ability to go through and make something like that work. If we go through with, again, to your point, 100% love the development agreement, and that's kind of our fallback. But what we have and what we're saying to the development community is, we want you to have to jump through a additional hoop every time that a development needs to be done in Roy. We're going to have, when the liquor store turns around and moves down by Kent's, that piece of property is 100% prime real estate. And if we don't go through and make it so that there's a developer that can have some large-term vision in terms of what can possibly be done, again, at least on the east corridor, I think it would be unwise for us not to go through and approve just the additional building height. Again, the overwhelming consensus that I've heard is, as long as we do it in particular areas, and again, the southeast corridor is one of those areas where, again, I think of it from the perspective of, to like Brody's point, if you had a penthouse and you were able to sit in your penthouse and watch the Air Force show that comes in every 2 years, how cool would that be? Or if you're one of those types that, wants that type of experience where you see the jets legitimately flying over your rooftop every day, that gives somebody that opportunity. And so again, that's kind of the vision that I paint. And I think what we need to basically signal to our development community is that we're willing to go through and listen to them and basically give them again, I call it like the palette of, paints and colors with which they can go through and envision what can possibly be. If we continue to go down the development route perspective, why did we even do a general plan? We're just doing spot zoning at that point, because we're going through and basically saying, hey, we don't want to give you the broad benefit of, knowing what you can come in and just, paint. You can come in and, do a secondary type, handshake agreement. And basically the development agreement, yes, it's effective, but it doesn't give developers the ability to know what is completely and totally fully capable of, what the city can and what we actually can do. So again, let's go back to what I led with. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. If we don't change that corridor, then we are consistently going to get people that are just going to complain that Roy City looks trashy on 1900. As the youngest person on this council, I would say, and again, this is even being one of the individuals that would be impacted by it, we should do the entire east side up to 10 or 12 stories, even up to and including my own backyard, because my backyard abuts a commercial property that if somebody came in and redeveloped it, it's going to give the density that's going to make it so long-term wise, we can turn around and have the property tax revenue that we need to not have to increase people's property taxes, as well as it turns around and brings in sales tax revenue generating individuals who are going to walk to Harmon's. They're going to, have purchases that they, buy in the local community. Dilly Dally's, it's finally open, by the way. Everybody go back to Dilly Dally's. They're back open as of this last week. But that's kind of like the vision that we need to paint, and that's the vision and, over the horizon thinking that we have to, give developers, is that we're willing to listen, and that's basically what developers are telling us. If we don't do this, they're going to go that way or they're going to go that way, and Roy is still going to be what it always has been.
Okay, Sophie, comment.
When you take the height, is it only in the orange, the red part of it? Is that the only, or is it the entire section?
So all the highlighted sections, it does change it from a strict height definition to a story definition.
2-story,
The-
but in different stories. Like
Correct.
each group has K. So
Yeah.
you're only the orange
So
is
so the pink is 40 feet, and so the recommendation is 4 stories
'Kay.
with the flexibility of the stories. The purple is 6 stories. There is that terraced approach to that, but so its recommendation from the Planning Commission was 6 stories rather than the 60 feet. The orange is where the Planning Commission kind of went and said, why are we restricting this area? Go up 12 stories. That's how that recommendation came. It started from staff as that the 80 feet in that area that's already approved, it should just be the 8 stories. Planning Commission forwarded the recommendation for that to be higher.
Okay. Sophie, you're okay with the
I
question?
agree with Randy, just because it's not a bunch of homes right there. It is,
It's a freeway.
yeah, it's all of our area. It's not going to be Clinton because I agree, Clinton has a lot of homes. You're in a tunnel. We're not even close to that. You've got businesses on all sides. I don't love that it can be 172 feet. That is really tall.
Find me a building in
That's
Utah that's
really
that tall.
tall.
Again,
Are they?
So that again, if that is the concern, I mean, it would be just what stories do you feel is appropriate? Is it 8 that was the initial recommendation? Is it 10? Is it 6 for all of them? Is it, you can talk about any recommendation you want there.
Yeah, and I think that's important,
and I-
Sophie, because you do have a recommendation of 12, but the council can make a decision
Correct.
different if they feel like 12 is too much. Okay?
And I would also say, and one thing that we had conversations with the Planning Commission, no matter what max height we say, the building would have to satisfy all of the building codes, the fire codes.
Yeah.
So we might allow it to be 100 and whatever feet high, but for soil tests, survey, blah, 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 it only supports this height, and that would be what would controls.
Yeah.
Is there a way for us to know what that might be? Do we have some preliminary data or preliminary information for that?
No, we don't. And
No.
to get that data would be insanely expensive.
And how far, how the building could the fire truck get to if we have a fire
Glad you asked
on
this
the top
question.
floor? Theron?
I asked that same question, Ann.
It's not a concern at all. These they're somewhat challenging, but it's not a concern at all. They're built to the adopted fire code and building codes that we adopt in the city, and it's not a problem at all. So they provide fire suppression in these buildings, and it's all based on that. So it's not a challenge at all. We're absolute advocates for buildings like this.
And our new ladder truck goes how high?
105.
Okay.
So yeah, you don't use ladder trucks. I mean, you look at any town metropolis that has, skyscrapers. It's fire suppression that puts fires out, and we have what's called connections within the high rise that we use, kind of like a fire truck. It has pressure, so it's not a concern whatsoever. So.
Perfect.
That was what I was thinking, if we had a building that tall. I mean, I can't imagine a building 170 feet tall. I mean, geez, how many of that, your houses? Because you have one of the tallest houses, Sophie and Roy, don't you? You think of your house that many more?
Can't be over 37 feet.
No idea.
I mean, and so, I mean, we've got to get some development downtown. A what?
Church office I was just going to mention, church office building is 420 feet tall. It's 28 feet or 28 stories. So I actually already calculated that. That's 42%. It would be just a little less than half the height of the church office building. It would be the max height for here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Brian, I think you had some questions, please.
Well, just to begin with, the height of the one property Woodbury owns was at 8, I think it's at 8 stories, or it was something like that.
The Royce.
Yeah, townhomes against the freeway.
And we worked diligently to try and defeat that. I remember it was a split vote that allowed that to go forward. So my question is can we use a development agreement for the one project where we know there is true interest, where we've sat down with them and gone story instead of feet? Isn't that a possibility?
Again, I go back to, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got.
Yeah, I think what Brian's basically saying, and just repeat it, Brody, because you're in the position to do so. There are two components here. We have one ordinance that's basically talking about a change to the Title 13, which will include the piece of property that deals with the Echelon group down there on the other side of Les Schwab. That's one conversation. But the fallback, if that does not get approved, tonight, then the next ordinance will come in, and that ordinance will basically then address just the development agreement on that particular piece of property. So the council will be able to look at both of these and decide. However, to Brody's point, if you approve the first one, which is why it's first, and you say that, it will automatically update the requirements so it meets the needs of the second ordinance. And so I think he would come with a proposal to either table it or basically cancel that ordinance if you approve the one we're talking about right now.
Well, everyone on this council realizes we can use the economic revenue.
Oh, yes.
We know that. We talk to neighbors, and neighbors talk to us. But it just seems to make better sense to build something first that we know than build something that we're not going to like down the road. And so I would recommend that we table the first ordinance and we consider the second.
Well, before you recommend, I'd like to make sure we get all the council to make comment. And
I just hate tabling. I just think that we're just turning away developers every time we table something. And we have people, like Brody said, are the first time in years that are actually looking to do something in downtown. And I don't want a Clearfield, lined, 6 stories. And I can't see that happening. I mean, there's not that many properties along the west side of 1900. The height along the east side against the freeway,
Who cares?
I don't know how that bothers anybody.
No.
Because there's just
Cars.
freeway right there. And anytime we can bring some development to Roy and help with our taxes, and I don't know, I don't want a 172-foot building, and I don't know what these guys are proposing.
No, nothing.
But I just feel that we just can't keep tabling and turning it down and have, like he said, developers are looking at this tonight, our council meeting, and they're going to just turn and go to other cities, in my opinion, if we don't get some things right tonight, so.
Well, stories can be changed. 172 is very tall.
Yes.
We all felt good about eight stories. That's why we said 80 foot,
Yeah.
8 at that time, because stories were more at 10 foot. Now stories are higher. That's definitely something that could be changed if we proceed here. And because the stories are a good way to do it. But definitely 12 stories, I believe, is not consistent with what the message we received from our citizens with that.
Right. So to put it into context, the tallest building in Weber County is how tall? Anybody? 12 stories. It's the First Security Bank building in Ogden.
On 20.
That is 12 stories. You're telling me somebody is going to come, and again, it just won't support 12 stories to go that high. So again, it's the aspirational of potentially 12 stories, but again, when you look at like what with like the Woodbury, the Royce property, that is going to be a Class A facility, which is equivalent to what we have. The closest Class A is Farmington Station. And that is the picture that Woodbury is trying to paint. If we continue to go against the grain of our developers, we're never, ever, ever going to redevelop the downtown corridor to what it is capable of being. And so, I mean, this is what needs to be done.
I can't see someone building something in Roy along the east side there that looks like the First Security Bank building.
Correct.
It just,
yeah.
Well, if you're, then I guess the question, council, remember what Brody said in the very beginning. He says, it certainly looks like right now it's at 8. It can be 12, which is the recommendation. Or you may basically simply says, okay, I'm willing to live with 10. And if he says, I'm willing to live with 10, then we can make a motion to basically modify this to get it smaller than the 12 stories proposed by the Planning Commission, if that's what you'd like to do. It would certainly be nice if we can at least look at maybe as a possible option, but please understand, I think what I just heard from Brody, he basically says there is some serious interest happening in Roy for the first time I've ever been a city council member and a mayor. And the question's going to be is that what you decide tonight will send a clear message in terms of whether or not we're going to look at a possibility of modernizing our downtown district. Chapter 13 took 1.5 years, 3 years ago. And although there has been some movement, we have never seen activity as active as it is now about doing something downtown. So what do we want to do in terms of simply sending the parameters by which people, property owners, developers may have an interest to do something finally with our downtown? And if the answer is that you're saying is, I can't live with 12 stories, can you live with 10 stories? Because you've already got, to the point he made, you already got 8 stories, and maybe 10 stories is something is perfect for a developer. And if that you're giving them that choice, they may come in with just 6 stories. I mean, we don't know what it is, but you're setting a cap of how tall it can be. So the question then would be is, are you willing to simply say, I'm willing to basically do 10 if I'm not willing to settle with 12?
Have you had interest in regards to over 8 stories?
Yes.
As you have?
Mm-hmm. That's the people who are listening to this meeting.
over 10 stories?
Over 8.
Sorry.
I mean,
Over
what
8.
about if we did to 10 stories?
I know that the one developer we talked to basically said your 80-foot restricts our ability to come in and create Class A projects.
Mhm.
And, you know, one of the concerns is in 2024, the legislature changed apparently our notification laws. So I'm kind of betting that there is not, I just can't imagine that, you know, we used to get letters when we had this kind of zoning change, but apparently we don't have to do that now. So so I'm afraid that the people that live around here or live around it are kind of in the dark. Maybe you can help me with that.
So that was actually something that this council also put into city code and that was something that I know you, Councilmember Wilson, addressed, was you were concerned that it was being taken out of the newspaper as well. And so that's something that the council did adopt. Obviously, we could go beyond what those requirements, those are the minimum requirements from the state, and that's what this council decided to do, was adopt those standards. So
That's right.
yeah.
These have been pretty good conversations.
Very good.
But it would be beneficial if there is at least some common ground that we all could agree to, but you bring into this conversation your perspective, which is very, very important. I think the voters and the residents of Roy City really need to make sure that they understand your perspective on these very important issues. But at the end of the day, okay, I need to go for a vote in terms of how we're going to address this proposal and then how we're going to address the next proposal. So is there any more comments, any more questions, anything that Brody can provide in terms of ordinance 25-2?
I'd just like to calculate what 10 stories could be. So just so we are actually talking in
143
heights.
feet.
So
143 feet if you're 172, because That was your 12 divided by 172 is 14.3, so 140.
So yeah, I have 144.
144.
Yeah, at that, 144. So we're going from 80 feet to 144 feet if we do
Potentially.
stories potentially, right? I mean, what we have to agree that, what we allow is what we're saying, you can't allow something higher and hope people are going to do something different. That
But
doesn't make
it's
sense.
It's not likely we're gonna have 8 of those down on 1900 of 144 feet.
No, that would be 100 foot back. That
Yeah,
would be,
right.
because from 15 foot from the street to 100 foot is up to 88 feet.
That's
That's
correct.
up to 88 feet.
And the important piece of this conversation, Council, so you make sure, 5600 is going to be done this year.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we've got an agreement that we're going to work close with UDOT, and we'll have a meeting coming up in a few weeks that's going to help validate. But our plan would be is that rather than waiting for the project to be completed in 2026, we're going to go to UDOT and ask UDOT to consider going ahead and see if they would allow that property that now they own, if in fact they would release it to be purchased so we can put development on it. And if you've looked at what happened in 56, there is a corridor of open space that's now going to be available. What is Roy City Council wanting to do with that vacant space? Because remember, the critical component to this conversation is, as long as it's in the hands of UDOT, we don't get a dime from that. No revenue, no property tax, nothing. We've got 5 homes sitting down there on 56 right now, owned by UDOT, that we don't get a dime. And Matt and I and Brody are going to be talking to UDOT to simply says, why don't you sell that? Why don't you get those out of the hands of UDOT and get them in the hands of the private sector so Roy City can start generating the revenue that we, in fact, were taken from us as a result of widening of 56. And if you did not hear the previous meeting, let me just recap what we heard. 200 other properties are going to be impacted. And we have seen some of those designs of which ones are going to be total takes. Matt and I and Brody have seen that. Brandon's been in the meetings. These are total takes. Once UDOT starts taking the properties on 3500 SR 108, we again stop losing revenue coming into Roy City to help pay the day-to-day requirements we have. We have got to get excited about moving in a different direction to try to draw the revenue. Because in all fairness to Dennis in the back room, and he's absolutely correct, we cannot keep looking at property tax being the only solution. Roy City has got to find ways by it can generate revenue to pay for us to provide services. And that's hard. Everything we've talked about, everything we've gone through. So we need to be thinking long-term about how we're going to start generating revenue to the city so that the services we provide, we can continue providing them. So these are hard questions. They are hard issues. Recognize that. They need questions to be asked. But here's what I think I've heard from Brody, Council. He simply says this: give me some extra feet. We'll call those stories. Give me some extra that I can go out now and I can bring in developers who basically believe that they can basically do some great things to modernize our downtown. That's what he's asking. And this just deals with changing from feet to stories and make it such that he, as an economic development director, can now go out there and start really selling downtown to bring improvements that we need. And I promise you, and he alluded to it, but this is the fact. Everybody that'll tell you, if you can consolidate on a single piece of ground and build up, you're going to make a significant more revenue on that piece of property by building up than spreading it out.
Correct.
And here's an opportunity you can make that happen. If he's got people knocking on his door simply says, waiting for a decision, that we can really make that happen, then I suggest to you is that we take a leap, and this is a leap of faith, that simply says, finally, we can start the modernization of downtown, which we've been talking about for a long time. Last comment, and then we'll listen to what you have to say before I ask for a motion. I cannot tell you over my time as being mayor and city council how many people have turned to me and says, Bob, I want a nice sit-down restaurant. They keep saying it and expecting it. And I promise you, I cannot deliver, neither can you deliver a restaurant. You have to define, and Brody, you have to provide a destination in Roy. I'm tired of people driving through Roy. They need to stop in Roy. They need to live in Roy. If we can continue doing that, we'll get those sit-down restaurants. We will get the things that the people have demanded and expected from us to deliver. But we have got to make the change downtown. Whatever that will look like, it has to happen downtown. I certainly do not want a restaurant in my back door.
Right.
But the key would be is that whether that happens or not is in your hands.
Right. Most people get their first view of Roy on 1900. They don't know we have a lower Roy with all those, nice amenities down there. And so I just feel that, I get comments all the time too. We get a nice hotel in here, then obviously a restaurant, that would be supported by a restaurant, and just would have the domino effect of more and more businesses, and same with the tracks area also with those condos, and hopefully more businesses will come down there. But I just think that we've just got to get the ball rolling, and I just think if we just keep kicking the can down the road, then developers are going to forget them. I'm going to go somewhere else.
Hey, Brody, what about unlimited stories?
Are you asking my opinion?
I am. Unlimited. There's a song about that, Anyway.
I'm afraid I don't know that song. I apologize.
It's from Wicked.
I fell asleep watching Wicked, just to be honest.
That doesn't surprise me. So, all right.
Well,
I'm just asking, how would that fit? It's definitely not necessarily what the citizens have in mind, but if we're talking about, I'm just wondering, in reality, how would that fit, and does that sound like anything that you've had interest in, and that sort of thing?
Well, so I'll answer that a couple of ways. And I know it's solely by my position and that I have to stand here. This isn't my position, and I have interest in doing my job. If you think unlimited is a great idea, do it. Again, the soil, the footings, the environmental impact will dictate a height. So if you want to just allow that, I don't think it's a bad idea. If you, for whatever it's worth, I believe in personal property rights. So short of doing something that's illegal or highly offensive to your neighbors that is just completely out of character, I think people should be able to do what they want on their property. Now, that's just me personally. So, but yeah, if you guys want to go unlimited, I know a bunch of developers would be super excited.
Well, I'd like to, before we take that particular action, I'd like to basically just ask is that we have right on the table a request for 12 stories. And we're just talking about some adjustments within the downtown. If you're not comfortable with that, we certainly could look at 10 stories. Or you can simply go up there and suggest leave it as it is. Those are your choices, I think. I think the comment about allowing it to be driven by the environment, certainly by the structure, certainly by the ground soil, is an interesting one. I don't know how you move forward with that, but that's certainly an interesting conversation. But at this moment, I think the council is struggling just trying to agree to 12 or 10.
I like the unlimited. Don't get me started, Diane. You opened that one.
But at least the point is that the council could simply say tonight, I like this is what I want to do, and approve that. If in 6 months or 8 months we want to come back and and there's another conversation that's going to happen shortly after this, to simply look at all alternatives, you're the city council. You change ordinances. That's what you do. My comment would be is that can we get tonight maybe to agree in terms of this particular ordinance, whether that should be 12 stories or 10 stories or not? And I'd like to simply ask, can you live with 12 stories as it sits? If you can, I'd like to proceed with the motion then to approve ordinance 25-2.
Would that also include maybe their parking, part of their parking also, part of those stories could be the parking?
Yeah, and it certainly could. And if somebody went higher, then I would think 8 stories, there would definitely be some sort of parking structure, most likely
Almost
on
have to be.
either subterranean or as part of some of the floors.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's where when we talk about the building codes and the requirements, there does have to be adequate parking. And then, we also talked about this. If you're a developer who's going to come spend $100 million to build an office building or a whatever the type of building, right? They pay engineers a significant amount of money to make sure enough people can get there. So,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
But parking would count as a story.
Yep.
Well, we are going from one swing to the other. We talked about a survey that we spent $14,000, and we know that people in our community are a little bit reticent about this kind of elevation, although they do want economic development. So I think maybe the mayor has a point. Maybe we can start with 10 stories, which still is pretty, crazy, go from 80 foot to 144 feet. But then maybe that at least gives us some evidence that we're trying to listen to our residents and balance their two desires,
Are you willing to make a motion to
And
do
several
10
years
stories?
ago, when that study was done too, the country was different then too, in jobs and money and everything. I think if you did that same survey today, they would say just anything to lower my property taxes, just help us out in Roy City and get something going.
Yes.
That's my opinion. That's what my family says to me anyway.
Okay, so
But, is that 10 stories? Do you think that would be, still get some developers in here if we change it from 12 to 10 stories? Brody?
It's going to help. Can I promise that they're going to do anything? No, because
Yeah.
I am unable, as strong as I think I am, to make billion-dollar corporations do
Right.
what I want.
So if-
However,
so if
the
we did-
8 to 10 stories gives them flexibility to make projects that are viable in the market.
Viable, pencil.
Right.
And again, the other thing we also have to take into consideration, given the current, economic climate, we are going to start to see interest rates drop. And that is a key indicator for developers to start to develop. And so
Exactly.
this sets the tone. And are you willing to go 10 stories? Because I think it's great.
Well, and if a developer comes in and they have the study of, of what can go on that property, and in 10 stories, can anything be changed once we say 10 stories? If they come in and say, I really need like one more story or something, then is
Development
that
agreement,
just like-
correct?
Yeah, nothing would change. So
Nothing
you
would
can pass this ordinance today, and we can revisit it in 2 weeks if you think you want to change the story limits or whatever. And furthermore, just like tonight, any developer can come in and say, I need these specific things, and we're allowed under the law to do a development agreement. So yes.
Okay.
So with all that, great conversation then, I'm sensing from the council, we can probably find at least some compromise at 10 stories on the downtown east.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to ask then for a motion, okay, with a change, okay, and make sure that we just change that particular
So
portion.
the motion would the only thing it would do is you would substitute anywhere that says 12 stories to be 10 stories. Otherwise, it's the recommendation from the planning commission.
Okay,
And
so
can I ask one question before we do that?
Please.
What's the difference between the viability of a 5-story versus a 6-story project
Specifically, I don't know.
generally? Because I understand from 4 to 5 stories, it goes from wood to metal, and I was just wondering
Yeah,
from
so
5 to 6.
The difficulty, and one, I'm not a very good builder, as anyone who's been around me at my home knows. And I can only speak specifically, like the Echelon project, it's not necessarily the 4 to 5 stories, it's the height versus the width of the building where it runs into the steel versus the wood. So I don't know necessarily that it is a 5 versus 6 or a 4 versus 5. It's just the flexibility to change those stories to ease construction costs.
Right, because depends on the property of where you can go, up or.
Okay. Okay, council, let's walk through this. Make a motion, looking for a motion to approve ordinance 25-2, consideration amendments to Title 10 zoning regulations, amending Chapter 13, mixed use, building types, storefront, general stoop, limited bay, large format, and civic, type buildings, changing the building height from the overall height to a number of stories allowed within the downtown zone, and then change in the document where there is 12, change that to 10 stories. That's the motion.
So moved.
And do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, this is a roll call vote. Brittany?
Councilmember Scadden.
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson.
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton.
Nay.
Councilmember Wilson.
Is there a time limit for waiting? Aye.
Councilmember Paul. Aye.
Okay. Thank you, council. Ordinance 25-2 is approved. Now, we do have ordinance 25-3.
Yes. So if I may, Mayor.
Go ahead, please.
Considering what happened with 25-2, a staff's recommendation would that we just do a motion to deny this so that it is dead and it would move on to the way of failed bills.
Okay, council, comments on ordinance 25-3, which is consideration development agreement with Sunset Builders regarding the Echelon project located at 5902 South, 1900 West, to allow the overall building height to increase by 10 feet. It is a city's position that we recommend to deny. Comments, questions?
Okay. Okay. Motion to deny 25-3.
That's what's on the table. Yep.
So moved.
Okay, so motion then to deny ordinance 25-3, the consideration development agreement and Sunset Builders regarding the Echelon project located at 5902 South, 1900 West, to allow the overall building height to increase to 10 feet. I have a motion to deny. Do I have a second?
Second it.
Okay. All in favor? Or, okay, yeah, because it's only the other side. I have to make sure, we don't do this very often, council. All in favor of denying then ordinance 25-3, say aye.
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 Any oppose? Okay, so 1 oppose and 4 approved denial. Okay. Thank you, council. Consideration of ordinance 25-4, the ordinance requiring the city of Roy to hold an annual truth and taxation hearing. Matt, I think you're going to talk to this one. Thank you.
It's me again. So this is just an ordinance that was prepared based upon the direction that staff received from city council, that the council or the city does hold an annual truth and taxation hearing. This does not bind the city to increase the certified tax rate yearly. It's just to ensure that the process is gone through, and that's it. So any questions regarding the ordinance? Is pretty short and sweet, but.
Okay, any council questions? Any comments relative to the proposal to consider ordinance 25-4?
Nope, should have one every year. That's my comment.
I've received some back and forth in regards to it. You know, certainly some people say it's easier to have it every year, so we're acknowledging it. But on the other hand, some people say, you know, the whole purpose of truth in taxation was to be able to keep the council as honest as possible and not make it too easy and make it difficult for us. So we did try to prevent doing tax increases. And so certainly we need to consider, you know, both sides of that. And
Yeah, I mean, this
Yeah.
does, this does allow, it gives us more time as well, because it automatically, when we come into the, you know, right before the budget is supposed to be approved for the next fiscal year, with us automatically going into a truth in taxation, it effectively buys us what, like another 90 days, to where it gives us the ability to even delve in more in-depthly into where the budget is actually going. So I don't see it as a downside. I 100% see it as an upside, not just for us, but for staff as well as the general public. And on top of that, it gives us the ability to go out and launch educational campaigns, just to where we can go through and educate just, you know, our constituents. Because a lot of constituents don't realize that as a municipality, we're statutorily required to run a balanced budget.
Right.
Every dollar that we take in, we have to return back to the citizens in some type of, you know, service or, you know, program coming out of the city. So again, it gives us time to go through and just articulate that is what this budget process is all about. So I see it 100% as an upside. I'm excited.
Yep.
I see it as a kind of a club to hang over the public. And the reason that you try to capture your revenues is because of growth. And that's why cities do this. But in our case, it might result in a tax increase every single year based on our track record of late. And so I'm opposed to it. I think it's a bad idea. It's not something that's needed. The state requires the truth in taxation process. We don't need it. And I don't think there's a resident out there that's going to want to say, oh boy, more taxes for me.
But I bet they'll want to say, I want a good police department and a good fire department and a
And
good
you
run
can
city.
have those without a tax increase.
And again, to
don't-
Matt Wilson's point, this isn't saying that we're
Right.
going to do a tax increase. This is educating the public. And again, think of it from an educational perspective. That well, that's the thing is we're going through and we're saying, okay, the totality of your tax bill that you see from the county, that is not all Roy City.
Right.
It is only our portion. It is only and again, it gives us the ability to go through and articulate the money that is being paid in property taxes that they're getting in return for services, for parks, for police, for fire, for public works, for, you know, all those different various things. So again, I don't see it as a downside in any way, shape, or form.
in what way do you anticipate that you would help educate the public with that extended time?
Basically, because I think one of the things that we talk about is like coming up in one of the discussion items is like a citywide survey, asking the general question, hey, what percentage of your property taxes in our citywide survey actually go towards Roy City? And again, a lot of people couldn't take and articulate that. They just see their property tax bill and 100% associate that right all back to Roy City. But it's made up of us. It's made up of, you know, school districts, water conservancy, sheriffs. I mean, it's across the board. So giving, you know, our ability to go through and just lay out what it is their taxpayer dollars are actually paying for. It'll also give us the opportunity to sit, you know, tell them about if we've gone through and done like ramp grants and things of that nature, to where, you know, we're extending and giving them, you know, bigger, better services for, you know, the taxpayer dollars that are coming into the coffer. So again, I just see it more as being able to more broadly articulate, instead of the big bad tax, no, your taxes actually are tangibly attributable to something in your local community.
And that's different. How is that different from doing that in May versus doing that in August? I mean,
Time. We get more time to go through and articulate that, because again, automatically going into a truth in taxation makes it so we have our truth in taxation. The latest we could absolutely possibly have it is what? Second meeting in August. So it gives us, the entirety of the summer to remind people that, hey, Roy Days is part of your taxpayer dollars. Concerts in the park are part of your, taxpayer dollars. Again, just going through and making it so people can quantify. Again, we're not just, we are very, very, very well run from a budgetary perspective, and people just need to realize and understand that, the different various things that we do for community outreach are part of their taxpayer dollars.
And you're thinking we couldn't do that before May? I'm just wondering.
No,
I'm just wondering. Because how else would we do it? Would we do it like town halls? Is that what you're thinking every year, or?
Well, again, that's the truth in
I'm just,
taxation.
wondering.
The
what you
truth in
had in mind.
taxation turns around, and again, leading up to it, we can, be more communicative in terms of, putting things out there in Facebook. We've moved to, what are we doing bi-monthly for the newsletters electronically, and then also in their bills. So again, getting that out there, just saying, we've got a truth in taxation. Would you like to know where your taxpayer dollars are being spent? And then that way, it gives us the opportunity to get out ahead of that. And just again, I look at it more broadly from an educational perspective.
Okay. Okay, great comments. Appreciate that. Anything else before I go for a motion to approve 25-4? Okay, nothing else. Then do I have a motion I have a motion to approve ordinance 25-2, an ordinance requiring the city of Roy to hold an annual truth and taxation hearing.
So moved.
Randy, okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, and, this is a roll call vote. Brittany?
Councilmember Scadden,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson,
Nay.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Paul. Aye. Councilmember Saxton.
Nay.
Okay, thank you, council. Ordinance 25-4 then is approved. We do have a couple of discussion items I'd like to talk with you about. Specifically, a Roy City-wide survey. Now, according to the paper, if you're able to read through that, sorry, it might be a little wordy, but the intent is that certainly surveys within the city are very valuable tools for city councils and, for that matter, senior staff in terms of what the pulse of the city basically wants, what they think. The last one we had, and I'll go back to Diane's previous comment, she says there was a limited survey that we did back in 2021 to help us kind of frame the Chapter 13 ordinance. But prior to that, I think the last one was in 2016, and the one before that was back in 1997, or it was way, way back. The intent would be is it time for Roy City to basically consider whether or not we should start thinking about establishing another survey, and with that, then allowing then both the council members as well as senior staff to infuse into a survey some questions that we would like to ask the residents in terms of their opinions on. Very important issues. Some of the things we talked about tonight would certainly be part of that. This is not saying that you approve to do the survey. It's just asking you, would you be okay for us to take this to the next step and get more details, what the cost would be if we got a professional survey team to come in, and also what kind of timeline that would be. Is that something you think you would like to have done? Comments?
Well, didn't we pay thousands of dollars to Weber State or something last time, and then they came and?
No, it was
Y2.
It was Y2. Weber State actually did it at no cost.
Oh, did they? Okay.
Yeah,
And
they
I
were
can't remember
free.
how they got out the survey, how they contacted people.
Actually, I was there, and I will tell you the process was kind of interesting. They were very familiar with how to do it. They resided the input where the input was needed to go into their system. So they held the input from the public, and so we accumulated the data there. So they provided the residents a website that had the questions to go in and answer. And then we broke the city up into 12 groups. So they're kind of sub portions of the city. And they needed to get, to make it work, they needed a certain representation from each area within the city for them to be able to get to the 95, 96% accuracy in terms of their survey assessment. And we were able to do that. What was interesting would be is they actually put students out knocking on doors to pick up the few remaining ones that they needed in order for them to be able to have a statistically effective kind of a survey. And so all that happened. They did it with their graduates. We thought it was really successful. They offered a lot of interesting questions. You can certainly read that. It's available to you on the web. If it's not, I can certainly send it to you, that original survey. The only thing that we really thought that this survey might very well be better is it is all about how you formulate your questions, because the formulation of the questions will help lead to much more positive outcomes. And so that requires an organization. Now, Matt can talk about why too, because since that particular survey took place back, I think, on 2016, we did a Y2 survey. And Matt, if you can, maybe you can talk a little bit about how that one unfolded and maybe help Ann know about what that cost us.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about that tonight. That was the survey that Councilmember Wilson was talking about in 2021 about the Chapter 13. The nice thing about Y2 is they formulate the survey and they do it all themselves. However, it does come with a pretty heavy cost. Of the last survey pre-COVID was $17,500. So they're definitely not cheap. You know, I'm a numbers guy, and I do believe in statistics. They're very good at that, and they can articulate those statistics to, you know, with the population and how many samples they need. They figure all that out for us. That's something Weber State was able to do. I don't know if Weber State's willing to do that again. Something we could definitely check. But I like that unbiased survey. Typically speaking, to me, when you just put something out there and say, hey, come here to complain or whatever, that might be what you get, is the people that just want to complain about certain things. But if you want to actually get statistical data on what the general population thinks, there is value of hiring that company. Although, like I said, it does come at a steep cost.
I made a phone call to Weber State and haven't received anything back. Best I can tell, there may be a place that does it, and they asked me, or if you knew who did it, was it through a specific thing? There is a community research and evaluation department that does that. And
I have the
certainly,
names, and I think they're still there, Diane, today, the same professors. And they did use graduate students, to help be able to bring some legitimacy, I think, to the data, okay? It really comes down, and there's certainly going to be a cost. There's certainly going to be possibly some benefit.
Maybe.
And I don't think we really want to be in a position right now without filling in all the squares of what you think you would need to be able to do that. I guess my comment to you would be, would you like us to take it to the next step and then come back next time with at least all of the information to say, yeah, this is a good thing, or maybe you believe it's just not. And we can certainly suggest we can reach out to Weber State University and see if they'd be willing to help us again. That might be an option, particularly if there's a cost element to that. But we can look at a couple of different sides of this. What we don't want to do is invest a lot of effort into this if you honestly think, this is probably not the right time. So all I'm looking for is just what kind of direction would you like us to move on this issue?
I would definitely like to have an idea on what the cost would be, because we are at a very tight point in budget. And so although information can be helpful, certainly it can be skewed even in the best of situations, but professional helps us with that. So I think that's what I would like to look at first, would be cost before
you make a final.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then just double check and make sure there's not like a state contract or something, because I can't imagine we're the only municipality that's in for these types of services, or state agency or anything like that. So
Yeah, I know the last time we did a survey, we did put it out for RFP, and Y2 was the only one that submitted a bid on it.
Yeah.
So
Brian?
they very well could be a state contract now. I would have to check.
Comments, Brian?
No, I think it's sort of, if we're making decisions on how tall buildings are going to be, I think we need a survey.
Okay. Sophie, thoughts?
Yes.
Okay, Randy? You okay? Ann, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, do they survey just homeowners, or do they who do they all survey? I mean, just.
They'll target, and one of the things you might want to say, and certainly we can look at this, is maybe you want to talk about business owners. And how do business owners feel about important issues, okay, that we're addressing? So I sense from the council to go ahead and we'll take the next step, provide as much detail as we can to you, and then come back with some information and say, okay, here's what we've got. Do you want to pull the trigger or not? You okay with that? Okay. The next conversation is a discussion I'm dealing with telecommunication franchise agreement with Lumen. This one's going to get a little bit more interesting. I didn't know if they were here tonight. Both Matt and I are going to talk about this. I sent you a paper on this conversation. First thing is it identifies a variety of information, also provides you information about specifically, it provides information from their presentation they provided to the council a couple of weeks ago. A copy, and Brittany, thank you for sending us a copy of the agreement that Matt Wilson was able to draft up, and with some key information that's found in that. I didn't print the entire agreement but I think the crux of what we could get, we needed out of the first 7 or 8 pages, and so I sent that to you. I also sent you a copy of their presentation, and then I sent you the recent letter we received, in which case they are indicating they would like to have the city council consider making modifications to the franchise agreement, and they were willing to make some adjustments, okay, in their numbers and reduce the number of pedestals that they were willing to do or wanted to do within that. There's a piece of information we just got Monday. Matt, if you can help us with that conversation that took place Monday.
Yeah, for sure. As part of that letter, they did talk about, in the presentation, they talked about the different zones in the city and how many pedestals were within each zone. When they came back with that letter, they came back and said, this zone, we're not going to be doing pedestals. And so with that being said, they're in compliance with that franchise agreement, so they can start proceeding with their work in that zone without the pedestals.
Okay.
Yeah, so
And they
they're
just reached out
conforming,
to us yesterday.
Yeah, they're conforming to the ordinance, so that's, that's.
Yeah. To the agreement.
So
Comments?
so the zone, I didn't go through all of it, so that means they can put them in people's yards or not in?
So they wouldn't be able to put the pedestals in people's yards, but kind of
Okay.
like the other company that came through, they're all underground.
Yeah, they're all
Okay.
flush.
And so they're able to do
Yeah,
that.
because everybody
Yes.
that reached out to me said, I do not want a pedestal in my yard.
32.
Yeah.
32 is the number of email responses that I gave
Yeah.
to concerned
I
residents.
had emails and Facebook posts and,
I go and say I'm going to raise your taxes. I don't get a single email, but they turn around and you have a hideous pedestal in your front yard. Yeah, everybody loses their mind.
no, I responded to so many emails about this too, so.
32 is what I counted in my responses.
Okay. Hideous was an interesting word. I don't use that word very often, Randy, so.
It's hideous because it's in my mother's front. Yeah, and she
I
just redid
understand.
her entire yard, and it's an absolute eyesore.
Yeah,
Okay, I
Matt has
understand.
one in his front yard too, huh?
Okay. Well, here's the reason for this conversation, okay? We just need direction. The direction could very, very well be that says, hey, I'm willing to allow some percentage or whatever, or your decision could very well be is leave it as it is. And if it's leave it as it is, just give us some direction and it'll be that way. But if you're going to basically says, hey, I'm willing to give some flexibility to any company, not just this one, that says I'm allowed 10% or some other number, then we'll need to come back with a formal change to the franchise agreement, and you will need to read that and then do a final reapproval.
Let's keep it the way it is. Let's have them hold to the current agreement that they've signed.
And I mean, I'm the pro fiber guy on this council, and I don't even want one of those in any. Yeah, I mean, when I looked at like where they'd have to put it, like 41% of my neighbors would have to have one of those pedestals. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Sophie?
Leave it alone.
You okay to leave it the way it is? Brian? Okay, I think the consensus of council is leave the franchise agreement in place as it is, Matt.
Right.
Okay? Okay. Okay, we'll move forward with that. We
Can
won't
I-
move forward, we'll
Can
just.
I ask a question to Matt Wilson? As you know, the vote on ordinance 25-2, amending the zoning regulations, was a very difficult vote for me. And I don't know, if I could have asked you this before, I would, but I'll ask you right now. I would like to change my vote to nay. Is that possible now? How do I do that, or how would that work?
So the item would have to be brought back up for consideration.
Okay, well, I guess I can publicly say that if I had the opportunity, I would change it to nay.
Okay. Okay. City manager's report. Matt?
Just a few things for you. As you know, a couple of city council meetings ago, we changed the dates for the dumpster program down at Public Works. That's coming up, actually, April 14th through the 19th, and then also May 12th through the 17th. That's Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. through 5 p.m., and then Saturday, 8 to 3 p.m. Also, I wanted to make you all aware that the Transportation Commission from UDOT would like to hold their meeting here at Roy City. They're planning to do so June 26th and June 27th. The 26th will take place downstairs, and it's kind of an open house to come through and see the different UDOT projects that they're doing. And then the commission will meet on the 27th, which will be a public meeting where they vote and things like that. You obviously are very welcome to come to those as well. Also wanted to report that we've been working on the lift station over, by your house, Randy.
That's right.
It is actually up and running, so.
Really?
Yes.
Since when?
Since about 11 today.
Okay, duly noted. So I haven't used the
Today.
services yet.
Today. So we're going to have to go in, so now all the sewer is going to North Davis Sewer District. So those residents in that area will be seeing a reduction in their bill with their sewer, because traditionally it was going to Central Weber Sewer, which has a little higher
And with
rates.
that announcement, Matt, Brittany, that's such a great story.
Where's my ribbon cutting? I mean, come on.
Well,
Anyway.
ribbon cutting, that's a good one, Brandon. Think about that.
I would've-
Small building.
We have an HOA Facebook page. I could have got all the neighbors there and got them all really excited. Anyway, sorry.
But I think certainly if there's any way you could make maybe a comment, Matt, Brittany, maybe on their website that simply says, for those who are assigned to the Weber Central Sewer District, we just basically made the adjustment, and with that adjustment comes what, Matt?
Bill reduction for some of those residents.
$2 a month, something like that.
I think it's like 10.
Shut
Well,
up, is
yeah.
it really that much?
Yeah.
I just pay my bill.
Perfect. Yeah,
So
it's
the
a great
residents will know.
story, you know. I mean, it cost us $1 million, okay, but over the long run, it's going to be perfect. So it's a great message.
You, like a lot of the public buildings that we have, you could also consider naming the building after somebody you'd like.
Hey. Cool.
No, I don't.
No, I will take an honorary plaque anyway.
No. We don't. It's a sewer transfer station. We're not basically going to name that.
All right, sorry about that, Mayor.
No, but I like that interesting comment.
And then also, April 1st, the Roy Days applications are going to be open. So that's for the art show, the parade, the vendor booths, so on and so forth. So that's April 1st. And then also wanted to report, I don't know if this information is necessarily public yet, but we did get notified that we received 2 ramp grants. One's for the trees in the parks of about $25,000. And then our Arts Council does the concert in the park over at George Wallen Park and the library in the amount of about $2,700. So, and that's it.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Council, any comments? Anything you'd like to share? Things you'd like to see changed?
I just wanted to say that we hosted the United for the special needs kids basketball tournament for the district at our school, and we used the complex gym for 2 hours, and that was where I was stationed for 2 hours, and it was really a great open house for all these people from all these other schools, because they could see the pool. They all commented on what a wonderful facility it was, and I thought it was great advertisement for Roy City to have that, and we did such a good job that we're going to be doing that every year now. So, and our team made it to the finals, and so these special needs kids are playing at the Delta Center. They get to go down there and play their championship game. My granddaughter was involved as one of the coaches, and to see these kids in wheelchairs go down and make a shot, you thought they'd won the NBA championship, and then another kid in a wheelchair trying to block that kid in the wheelchair so he can't make the shot. But it was just a real enlightening experience. But for all these people to visit our complex also, it was just really a good event for our city to have that also. But
Thank you. Great comment, Ann. Thanks. Anybody else like to share a thought?
Yeah, no, as I say, I've actually got, there was some people in the community that reached out in regards to looking at doing like a community garden in the parks. I've got Michelle kind of researching that to see what other cities have done, but just giving you kind of a heads up if you want to get out ahead of it before she takes and actually presents that in an upcoming council meeting. Something that I think we should consider. Because we have parks and we have green space, and you know, if somebody has a green thumb and wants to go in and provide free produce to the community, I mean, it's definitely very community building. So just one of those things that just from a community engagement perspective, there's some interest in. So just wanted to kind of put that in front of the council just as a potential forthcoming topic of discussion.
I like it.
So when is the Easter egg hunt?
19th? April 19th.
April 19th, okay.
We changed it up a little bit. We're trying to market it more as a spring kickoff event.
Okay.
We are hoping to have a touch-a-truck, and then we have partnered with a local children's entrepreneur market that is going to be there. So there's going to be a children's vendor market going on at the same time. The Easter egg hunt on the 19th.
But still at George Wallen and still the same.
Okay. Yeah, that's great news. Please make sure we get that information out. Those are all popular. And is Waste Management help sponsoring that again?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Ryan, anything?
No, I'll just reiterate, Dilly Dallies is back open. And so it's good to have them back open.
Yeah, I know that because they had all their Valentine candies in and they couldn't sell it, and so their daughter works at Roy Junior High, and so they got a Valentine candy party at Roy Junior High. So that was great for Roy Junior High.
Okay. Diane, anything? Ann, anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, council, I don't have anything. Matt and I worked those issues before. So again, thank you for being. We got a lot of good things done tonight. Therefore, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Randy, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Brian. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? No opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you.